Hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Journey into Tech series session. I'm Jasmine Den, your host for today, and I'm thrilled to be here with all of you as we dive into another exciting tech role. Before we dive into today's session, I want to make a quick few announcements. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and subscribe to our YouTube channel where we share more content, workshops, and community events. Don't forget to join our Mentor Me Collective Slack community where we can connect with mentors, tech professionals, and like minded individuals. Now, a little bit about Mentor Me Collective. We are a community driven organization committed to supporting the next generation of technologists, especially first gen professionals, early career techies, and those making transitions into tech roles through events like these. We aim to provide resources, mentorship, and real world insights to guide your career journey. With that said, I'm excited to introduce today's speaker. Today, we have the pleasure of learning from Evan Moss, an engineering project manager who has been leading cross functional teams and driving impactful projects into the tech world. Evan is going to give us an inside look into what it's like managing engineering projects, collaborating with teams, and bringing innovative ideas to life.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are. Uh, as Jasmine said, I'm Evan Moss, and I've been doing project management since 2013. I'm a few days shy of being 7 years at Apple, but I've also worked at a company called Four Moms, which makes robotic baby products, and Shark Ninja, working on Shark vacuum cleaners and Ninja kitchen appliances. Agenda very loose. We'll talk through kind of some of the details about what does it actually mean to do EPM work, engineering project management work. What are the critical skills and knowledge you need to be successful in this role? Kind of who are the daily stakeholders? What do my deliverables look like? And then let's talk about how to actually get a job. Cool. So there's there's a million different ways of defining what engineering project management actually means, and the experience that you have, or kind of the specifics of the job that you do, largely depends on the company that you're working for, as well as the products that you're working on. But kind of regardless of where you are, there's a few things that are pretty constant in my experience. As a EPM, the number one priority is to outline the development plan. Uh, no one ever gets a consumer product right the very first time. Um, Pretty much, if you want to sell a product, you need to come up with a design. You need to test the design, evaluate the results, evaluate what you learned, and then repeat. Oftentimes, over and over and over and over and over until you get a viable product. Um, and as an EPM, you can reduce the amount of time that it takes to land on a viable product if you actually map out your plan beforehand. If you can say, hey, let's have three rounds of prototyping. Let's do 3 rounds of testing, and here are the goals. Here are the goals for each of those tests. Being able to map that plan out beforehand helps the cross-functional people that are required to get an idea into production, or to get an idea out into the world. Mapping out a plan helps everybody be more efficient and everybody be more intentional in the work that they do. And so that's one of the most critical things to do, is to actually define what is the best case scenario. What is plan A? Um, the next kind of most important aspect is to try and ruin all the surprises. Not for the customers. You always kind of at Apple we always talk a lot about protecting the surprise, protecting the consumer's experience. But you don't want your stakeholders, or the people that you're directing, the people that you're working with, you don't want them to be surprised. And so being like helping to outline cost uh, accurately, and outlining costs, outlining risks, outlining how you'll address those risks, and making sure to actually define expectations. that prevents stakeholders from being surprised when they have to spend X amount of dollars. Or it also helps you recover more quickly when you can say, hey, we anticipated this risk. It showed up, so nobody panic. Uh, ruin ruin as many of the surprises as possible such that the people around you can actually do their work. Ruining surprises makes this actually probably should have been the third thing that I put on here, because as an EPM, it's likely not your job to actually solve problems. It's more specifically, it's your job to facilitate the conversations that lead to solutions. And what that means is on any given day, I get into work, I look at my email, a factory highlights, hey, your design failed this test. It's not my job to then go be the mechanical engineer to actually decide, hey, here's how we recover. It is my job to make sure that the people responsible for making those decisions, that they're aware of the issues, that they're aware of the time requirements, they're aware of all the other requirements, and that decisions are made in a timely fashion. And kind of most importantly, you provide perspective. Um, when you think about the different cross-functional teams behind any product you look at, there's marketing, there's marketing, there's engineering, there's operations or things related to production. There's quality. The quality folks, they just want to make sure that every single customer has the perfect experience. They don't always have a lot of awareness or perspective on when marketing needs those products to be on a shelf. And similarly, engineering cares about making the most amazing, the most capable, the most exciting design. They oftentimes completely lose sight of how expensive that design might turn into, and how no customers would ever pay for something so expensive. And so, like, being able to provide perspectives to the cross-functional teams such that they understand what the mission is, what the plan is, and how to proceed. That's one of the most critical things you can do, and you do that through effective communication. I almost said, are there questions, but we'll leave that for later. Critical skills and knowledge. My background is I studied mechanical engineering in college, and I've essentially never ever used that degree. And I also highlight the best EPM that I've worked with, the best engineering project manager that I've actually worked alongside. She frequently leads excessively complex technical programs, and she doesn't know much of anything about engineering. Her background is in marketing. And I mention that to say your degree only matters to an extent. And I'll touch on that more later. But there's no one degree that you need that you can get that will ensure you'll be a good project manager. Instead, there are some very critical skills. One of those being organization. Currently, I'm working on approximately 8 programs, and all of those programs have a list of issues and concerns and requirements and to-dos. And so being able to effectively manage 10 conversations all at the same time is a very critical skill. Being able to keep track of details, being able to recant details quickly, being able to pull, to access tribal knowledge or historical details from a program's development, and being able to use all of that to make decisions in a timely and effective fashion is really critical. And so if you're not an organized person, project management ain't for you. Time management is also really critical. As an engineering project, it's misleading because my job title says manager, but I don't actually manage people. I don't have the authority to actually go out and tell anybody what to do or when to do it. I can make suggestions. And so with that in mind, managing my own time, making sure I'm staying on top of my own action items is critical, but also helping the people that I support. Hey, engineers, a deadline's coming up. Please be on the lookout for this, because if I didn't effectively communicate the time requirements to my team or to the different cross functional individuals looking to me for direction, if I didn't effectively communicate the requirements, I can't be angry at them when they didn't get their job done, they didn't get their part done on time. And so just being able to stay ahead of the surprises, being able to stay ahead of the requirements, ahead of the schedule, is ultimately how you be successful in this role. Strong communication skills are absolutely critical. I kind of the quote I have here is read the room and know the moment. The way I go about conversation, the words that I use, the way that I structure my arguments, the way that I structure my sentences changes when I'm talking to engineers versus when I'm talking to marketing versus when I'm talking to sales versus when I'm talking to executives. And being able to adjust how you communicate in the moment, moment by moment, is critical to the role. And what I mean by that is sometimes if I'm talking to an engineer, engineers team engineers tend to be way more into the details. They want to know the numbers. They want to know the specifics. And so when you're talking to an engineer, you literally say more words versus if I'm in an executive review and I'm speaking with my senior director, and they ask me a question about an emergency situation. If I say too many words, they won't believe me. If I'm not concise, or it seems like I'm rambling, they might think I'm not actually addressing the question or I'm trying to hide something, and that could just spiral. Similarly, when you go to talk to marketing, you go to talk to sales about engineering stuff, just know the terms you use just vastly different. And so being able to adjust how you communicate to people to make sure everybody gets the same message, even though you said different words, that's largely how you do your job. Yeah, I think that's all I got to say on that. And then storytelling. Being able to inspire confidence and help your stakeholders know that you're not wasting their money is critical. But also being able to escalate issues, escalate delays, escalate changes in the plans. And when I say escalate, being able to let executives know, hey, an issue came up. Being able to highlight issues with the appropriate level of urgency is a skill, and that's an aspect of storytelling. If you don't want to absolutely raise the alarms for issues that could be solved very simply and quickly. But if you're not careful in how you phrase and how you form these stories, and how you actually like communicate issues as a project manager, you could either cause people to not pay enough attention, or you could get people a whole lot more concerned and worried than they need to be. Poor storytelling turns into extra work. And so like if I go in and I tell too bad of a story and my execs start asking more questions, that just turns into more follow-up work. Or if I tell a story that doesn't inspire confidence, then now the execs might require additional, like they might put in additional checks and oversight. So these are all kind of high level skills to keep in mind. And then you really become valuable when kind of your education or your other experience can support these skills. I mentioned before, I studied mechanical engineering. What that does, it improves my intuition. Understanding engineering fundamentals helps me in my time management, in that I can look at something and know, ooh, that's complex. That's going to take a long time to design. That'll take a long time to fix. That'll take a long time to test. Uh, my understanding of engineering terms allows me to communicate more effectively and more efficiently with engineers, and also awareness of how engineering works changes the stories that I tell. And that this situation might look really rough right now, but my engineering intuition suggests that after blah 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 more tests, we'll come out of this fine, right? Like it's the these are skills that you can develop outside of a classroom without having a specific degree, but then having a degree that kind of supports the specific job that you're pursuing. Marrying all of that is kind of how you can really put your best foot forward. Daily stakeholders. Like I said before, these answers are very generic here, but also understand the answers to this might change every single day. Engineering project manager, like obviously I have to interface with engineers every day, and this is helping them define priorities and monitoring the progress. For example, I sat down with two engineers just yesterday, and we were mapping out, hey, there's 5 components that still have not been released to vendors for them to go produce. Vince, the graphite is more important than the button. Can you please focus on that today? Nick, did the report get uploaded last night? Why not? No. Okay, cool. Let me go follow up on that. That's a pretty common conversation. Just checking in with my engineers, checking in with the people that are supposed to do the work that I need them to do, so that the project that I'm managing can actually get to completion. Obvious. There's also the cross-functional teams that I don't necessarily work for, but work with. And that's kind of the first thing I do when I get in every day is check my email. Reading my emails tells me, hey, here's the list of problems that I have to solve today. And then I need to go about actually contacting the different cross-functional teams that need to be part of the conversation, where we align and decide on how to proceed, how are we going to get out of this problem. I mentioned product development is an iterative process of designing something, building something, testing, and repeating. Design, build, test, repeat. Engineering project managers are responsible for being kind of the middle person between the companies that design the products and the factories that actually produce them. And so a really critical part of my job is, after I've sat with all of the cross-functional teams and the engineers say they want to test 50 prototypes of this design. The cross-functional team needs, marketing needs 30 samples. Quality needs 100 samples. The wireless validation team, they need 50 samples. Like, after I've sat and mapped out, okay, we're going to do 3 prototyping builds, and we need to build 743 in this one, and blah, 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 blah. Somebody's got to communicate that to the factory. And so, like, last night I ordered $500,000 worth of components from a factory. One of the most important kind of deliverables is a bill of materials, where I'm actually giving the factories instructions on build X amount of this product, and here's all of the details that you need to know to actually deliver that. So I work with the engineers, I work with the cross-functional teams. That tells me what direction to give to the factories. And then at the end of the day, I got to give my executives, give them an update about, here's a progress we made. Here's how we're tracking towards this plan that we all agreed to 3 months ago, to make sure they know progress is being made, issues are being found, and problems are being resolved. kind of my daily stakeholders at any given time. As soon as this meeting is over, I'm running to sit with a group of engineers and cross-functional DRIs so that we can align on a message to send to our executives. Deliverables, timelines, and Gantt charts. And this is it's unfortunate that I don't have actual examples to show you, but the deliverable, the way it actually looks is vastly different from team to team and from company to company. But in one way or another, if you're engineering project manager, chances are managing the schedule, managing the timeline for a development process is one of the most critical things you're expected to do, and actually visualizing that is a critical step. It's super simple. Making a timeline sounds like the most basic thing you could ever do, and a lot of times it is. But a lot of times when you're having to consider multiple perspectives, multiple teams, these timelines actually get a little bit complex, especially when step 17 can't be completed or can't even be started until step 4 is completed, and all these kind of codependencies or whatnot happen. These timelines and Gantt charts can get really complex, and there's lots of tools out there to use. At previous companies, I use a program called Microsoft Project quite a bit, but now I work at Apple, and so I don't use that program anymore. And like I make timelines and Gantt charts in like Keynote. There's all kinds of ways of doing it, but that's making timelines is a critical aspect of it. Slide decks and presentations. When we have exec reviews, there will be a whole panel, a whole group of people presenting to a team of executives, a team of people. This might be executives, this might be investors, this might be managers, whatever you want to call it. But in either case, it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon for me to be in a situation where we have 30 minutes to make a $5 million decision. We need to go in here and we need to tell a story, and we need our vice president to approve this team to spend $5 million. In such a situation, you got 30 minutes and a $5 million decision. You can't afford to have a 5 minute. You can't afford to have a 5 minute discussion about a mistaken comment. Under such circumstances, it's really important to tell a cohesive, well put together story, because if execs have to start asking questions, your $5 million decision might get delayed, and now your whole project is delayed because of poor storytelling or because of poor formatting. And so, like one of the most critical things is the actual finished product of the keynote, of the slide deck, of the presentation that's actually going to be shown in that review. Putting together meeting notes and status updates. This is just an extension of having strong communication skills. There are oftentimes hundreds of people that work on a single product. And as an engineering project manager, your role is to help make sure everybody working on the project is aware of the plan and aware of its requirements. And if you don't send effective communication, helping give people timely updates on the status and new requirements and yada yada yada, then you didn't do your job. And so, again, it sounds super simple, but actually being able to type effective meeting notes that other people can use, and then actually sharing those out, critical skills. Bills of material. This is just every single item that kind of goes into a product. And so, like a bill of material includes the plastic components, the metal components, the fabric components. It includes the screws, and it tells you how many of everything you need in a given product. It is my job to help align that bill of materials such that when I tell a factory, hey, I need you to go build 1,000 iPhones, they know exactly what that means. Let's see, is this my last slide? Oh, nope, not quite. Getting hired. Getting hired in project management it requires you to be good at selling yourself. One of the most critical things to do is to know your transferable skills. A lot of times people will have a whole lot more experience than they realized, simply because they are not good at articulating transferable skills. They can tell you, the specifics about what they did in their retail store, for example, but I wish I had a good example in mind before, and I'm completely blanking on it. I've talked to people that work in retail stores, and they'll say things like on their resume will talk about how they have a 100% satisfaction rate or something like that, not realizing that the transferable skill is not that they had high customer satisfaction. The transferable skill that needs to be communicated is the fact that they were able to communicate effectively with their customers, answer and address concerns and problems effectively, and ensure a positive customer experience. Being able to articulate the second half of what I just said, as opposed to it just being, achieved high customer success, like that's a matter of knowing what your transferable skills are. Everybody needs a problem solver, and so being able to articulate your ability to solve problems, and being able to articulate the skills that you use to do that is how you go from asking, do I have the right degree, to saying, hey, here's how my experience can be valuable to you. Understand that resumes are not supposed to be life stories. Resumes are supposed to help people understand, here are the problems you can expect me to solve. Here are the details that you need to know about me, about my previous experience, for you to be able to imagine me filling the role that you're hiring for. And so, like, my suggestion is that people actually, for every single detail on your resume, look at it and ask yourself, what do you actually expect anybody to learn from this? What do you expect them to be able to discern about you from the bullet that you just typed? And ask yourself, did you provide enough context for the intended message to actually be received? A lot of times people will put details on their resume that absolutely don't matter. And you come to ask them, why'd you put that there? And they say, well, it's what I did. It's blah, 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 blah. It's related to that job. Well, is it related to the job that you're trying to get? Yes or no? And or does this actually benefit your candidacy? Yes or no? On your resume, if you can't articulate how a given bullet point or how a given detail, if you can't say how that improves your chances of getting a job, then maybe it shouldn't be on your resume. Just know that experience is queen. And what I mean by that is, you can't learn how to manage projects until you actually just go out and manage some projects. But recognize you don't have to be an EPM to manage projects. I actually never even heard about engineering project management. I never considered it until they offered me the job. I interviewed for a mechanical engineering role, and they said, hey, you could do mechanical engineering if you want, but we think you'd be a great fit. For engineering project management. And the reason was because in one of my interviews, I had gone back and forth with the president of this company. He shared his philosophy for how he manages teams, and I shared my philosophy for how I manage an organization that I was that I was a part of as a student in college, and just my experience arranging teams, managing teams, like pulling teams together, communicating with teams through an extracurricular event in college, that convinced some, talking about that in a meaningful way helped somebody else realize, oh, wait a second, you actually have experience and transferable skills that can be applied. It looks nothing like what you were doing in college, but you already got the skills for it. And one of the most important things is not so much the degree you have, but just the experience you have kind of managing things, managing events, managing people, managing development of things. And so just know the experience that you have might be more critical than your actual degree. And your network is your net worth. I don't think that needs a whole lot of explanation. Yeah, I'll just let that one float there. I only got into project management because of my network. I went at the time when I applied to Four Moms. I joke and say I was allergic to babies. I was fresh out of college, and I had no interest in babies, in having babies, or working on baby products. But I went to this booth at a career fair only because I had a friend that was working in that booth. That friend ended up getting me a job, and that one job has changed my whole life. And it is, I mean, I can't stress it enough. Your network is your net worth. Kind of closing thoughts on PMP certifications, PMP certifications, degrees, and other things. How to use certificates to boost boost your candidacy. Just know certificates help, degrees help, but they are not required. Degrees matter, but only to an extent. Degrees ensure a base level of professionalism. Unfortunately, professionalism is a very confusing term. A lot of minorities, or minorities in general, for example, tend to translate the idea or the phrase "be more professional." Will translate that into "be more white," and that's not helpful to anybody. Replace the word professional with focused. A person with a degree oftentimes will come in and be able to present higher focus on things that matter, compared to a person who doesn't have a formal education or formal experience. But if you can come in, if you can exemplify, if you can convince somebody that you have adequate focus in the right areas, that your ability to focus might be more important than what your degree is. Or more so, when you can show people that you are able to apply the right focus, then your degree becomes less and less important. What I mean by that is when you get a given product, you give a look at it, take a technical issue. A person with no familiarity, their focus will be, how do I get started? How do I do the basic math to complete this step? They're not focused on how do I, like, more high level things of how do I get the other teams, the other cross functional DRIs, the other cross functional whatever, to be on board with this. And just I might, as a hiring manager, I might be looking for somebody who can present like that, the more high level focus. I can't afford to have somebody that's focused on just the super small, super basic details. And so, like, being aware of what's the level of focus you're actually able to achieve, and what is the level of focus that this hiring manager is looking for, what's the level of focus required for the job that I'm trying to pursue. That's oftentimes more important than your actual degrees and certificates. That said, I've been doing project management since 2013. I don't have a degree or certificate in it. I don't plan on getting one because the experience that I have, I think, says a whole lot more than a certificate would. Um, and that is all that I have.
Okay, Evan, thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed your presentation. One question that I had, what does DRI stand for?
I'm that's a Apple has broken me. I should have said individual. DRI is we use that for directly responsible individual.
Directly
Um,
responsible. Okay.
yeah, directly
Stakeholder.
responsible. Yeah, or yeah, directly responsible individual is like that's the person actually doing the work versus versus like a manager's not actually doing the work but overseeing the people who do the work. Um, but yeah, anytime I said DRI, I was just referring to other people who are actually doing the work and making decisions.
I see. I see. I do have a couple more questions here for you. I guess you answered most of it though throughout your presentation. But I guess early stages, what advice do you have for someone that's building that career, especially students, career transitioners, like top advice and where to focus, starting
Be
point?
be a problem solver. Uh, be a problem solver, and specifically, if you can if you can communicate that you are capable of solving problems that execs that kind of stakeholders actually care about, it's much easier to hire you. And so that's one, show like prove that you're excited to solve problems. One of the things that helped me get this job here at Apple, I talked about how in my previous roles I would oftentimes have to I'd have to fly to China, and I wouldn't always know what I was talking about. I wouldn't always know what I was doing, or even if I did, the people that I was working with a lot of times wouldn't didn't speak English. Uh, and sometimes I just had to, if it meant drawing a picture, holding somebody's hand and moving it for them, uh, if it meant finding alternative ways to communicate with somebody, it didn't matter. I was going to solve the problem, right? People understood. Oh, Evan Moss is a problem solver. That's how I got my job. And specific, just know every everybody that's developing a product, they need, not even anybody hiring for any role, they want people that they can trust to come in and solve problems. And so just being able to exemplify, listen, I can talk to anybody. I can I can change my conversation to talk to whoever I need to talk to. Uh, I can effectively communicate regardless of the person's education or their interests, yada yada yada. And I just love solving problems. You convince somebody of that, oh please hire them right now.
How do you continue to grow your skills or stay updated with the changes in project management?
How do you say that one more time? How do you stay up to date with everything?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's the process for managing projects doesn't really change. It's pretty basic. Like you gotta, if your goal is consumer products or any kind of deliverable, if you're delivering a good, um, you got to design something, you got to test it, you got to evaluate that test, repeat. And so it's not so much important to stay up to date on like things that are changing. It is important to know what are new possibilities, new technologies, new things that can be considered. uh, but the newness, kind of new tools or like new perspectives or whatnot are oftentimes kind of passed down or dictated by your management. The
Mm.
the different tools you can access or whatever. Like oftentimes that's controlled by your management. So it's this question is not so much a need to stay up to date. It is important to be continuously like improving your craft. That's something I pay a lot more attention to. Um, am I am I can I be more efficient in my communication? Um, like the shorter my emails are, the faster it is that I get a response. And so it's less so can I keep up with the times, and it's more so can I be more effective, can I be more efficient in what I'm already doing.
Thank you. I love that efficiency and communication and deliverables and all in all, just remaining as the problem solver that you
Yeah.
seek to be for your stakeholders. Now, those are the questions I had for me. We do have a couple in the audience. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat. But starting here, Chanel did have a few. Is it your role to break down the scope of work for each engineer on your team, or is it the engineering manager's role and you manage the completion of those tasks?
That's that depends. It depends on your team, depends on the company that you work at. Some companies want you to be way more in the weeds versus some companies don't. Um, it's it's more that's a question that you come to answer yourself with time and experience. Um, and even in my current work right now, like I have on one of my projects, the engineer is he's a lot more experienced. Uh, and so I just need to tell him, hey, here's the plan, and I can almost never have to check in with him. Cool, you got it. I'll check in the day the stuff is supposed to be delivered. Cool, seeing you did your job today, dope, and keep it moving. Versus I have another project with some younger engineers where sometimes for my job is to protect the end product and to ensure that the end product is awesome, however possible. Uh, they don't give you like I don't have a whole lot of like direction on how to do that. And so if it comes down to me actually having to sit down and prioritize all the components for engineer, sometimes I have to do that. Uh, but that's not going to show up in my job description. That's just something I do because I understand what my goal is.
I understand. So case by case, very individualistic, depending on your team and what their specific needs are.
Yeah.
Another question here from Guava Girl Alice. Research presentations or engineering demos mid sprint, what's your take on them? Are they usually successful or?
Uh, well, what's my take on research presentations?
Mhm.
I I'm not sure which aspect of that. I will say I will say all of the like research presentations and engineering demos, doing those will help you as a project manager. Uh, like being able to present when I think about kind of research presentations, typically you're presenting data to people who likely don't understand it or who aren't deeply kind of engrossed with it and need some kind of education. And so similarly, when I step into an exec review, I'm giving a presentation to people who might have an idea of what I'm talking about, but who don't know all the details, and I need to teach them something. And so, like giving a research presentation is a transferable skill for being able to show up in an exec review. Similarly, engineering demos, that's like a way of storytelling. In my job, if I take an engineering prototype into an exec review and I don't do a good job demonstrating it, my execs are just going to their conclusion will be, oh, this project is at risk. And now that's what I think I talked before about extra work and additional oversight. And so like being good at research presentations and having experience doing engineering demos, all of that can turn into transferable skills that help you be an effective engineering project manager.
That was actually a similar question that was brought up by Renee. How does one communicate transferable skills and how it impacts on a resume? You did touch upon that a bit, that if it doesn't really help you obtain the job, should it be a resume?
Provide context, right? Provide numbers. Understand. You'll see people say things like organized events regularly. It's like, hold up, were you organizing events for college students, or were you organizing events for mid-level professionals? Was this events for 20 people, or were these events for 200 people? A lot of times people will put things on the resume just assuming that the person reading it will also assume the same things they did. But context absolutely matters. If you don't provide enough context, all you're like providing context makes it harder for me to choose the wrong option. And what I mean by that is I might read your resume and there might be 15 different ways of interpreting it. And if you don't provide context, I just might choose the wrong way. I just might choose the wrong interpretation. The more context you provide, the easier it is for me to choose the right interpretation that you wanted. And so look at every bullet point, every detail on your resume, and ask yourself, what do you actually expect people to learn or to assume about you based on this one bullet point? And then ask yourself, is there enough context in this bullet point itself for them to do that? Is there enough context in the next bullet point for them to actually make that assumption about me? Yes or no? Yeah. Being really intentional. When I write a resume, I just assume that everybody who reads it has a short attention span and they don't like me. And the reason for that is in such a scenario, it becomes really important to get to the point really fast. And a lot of times I look at resumes and people will have these three line long bullet points. It's like, hold up, get to the point faster than that. For a single bullet point, my goal is to put the most important, most actionable, most relevant, most interesting part of that bullet point. It needs to come as early as possible. And then the second half is when you add context that helps people understand, oh, this is why the first half matters. And getting really good at getting to the point faster just makes your resume stronger. And so for a given bullet point, put the interesting stuff first. But then for a given section on your resume, like make a decision. And there's multiple lines of thought. I'm of the opinion, hey, the person reading it doesn't like me. They got a short attention span. Let me put these bullet points in order from most interesting to least interesting. Because chances are, if they're skimming, they're only going to read the first or the last bullet point. And there's ways to consider this, right? But like, make a decision. I put the most interesting stuff from top to bottom. I want the most interesting stuff on top, and then the least interesting on bottom. And this is just a way of being more intentional about controlling what people focus on when they see a resume.
Controlling the narrative. I like that approach.
Controlling the narrative. I tell folks, like, never tell a bad story about yourself.
That's all they'll always remember the bad anyway. But
yeah.
As a recruiter, I can attest to the 30. I tend to spend 10 to 15 seconds per resume. So I like your approach of thinking of it as an essay. Like, you have the hook, the intro paragraph, really, getting your audiences, grasping their attention, and then really getting down to the mundane stuff, but it's still important to tell your story. So
Yeah.
And we have a few minutes here, but let's see. Um, how do you go about managing deadlines when your team does, your timeline when your team doesn't meet those deadlines?
This is why communication is so important. Communication, as well as being able to have effective relationships with people. As an engineering project manager, it is my job to bring teams together and to help establish some degree of like camaraderie. Uh, in either case, like having healthy and positive relationships with engineers makes it easier to highlight, hey, your work is late. So my actual tactic is, one, I try to get to know people. I try to talk to them about things outside of work, just so there's some level of rapport. And very early in the project, the people that I have to directly support, I let them know, hey, my goal is actually to do as little work as possible. Like I don't like spending crazy long hours at work, and I really enjoy hanging out with my family. So I tell them, like, if I come to you with a question, or if I come to you with a request or anything, my goal is to help minimize the amount of BS, the amount of like extra stuff anybody has to do. I expressed that very early on. My goal is to try and make your job as easy as possible. My goal is to, as a project manager, it's my job to do the planning, and for it's my job to do the planning so that the engineers and other people doing like the actual technical work, so they can actually like go get their stuff done. And establishing kind of that relationship early makes it easier to walk over and be like, hey, Nick, I told you what the deadline was. We have now missed that deadline. Now I got to schedule a meeting with your manager, my manager, you, and all these other cross-functional people, so that we can figure out how to move forward. I mentioned like ruin the surprises. I don't want anybody to be surprised. Like the need to be super careful is more important if people could ever say, oh, I had no idea about that deadline. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights and experiences with us today. It's clear that the role of an engineering project manager requires a unique blend of leadership, technical expertise, and strategic thinking. Before we wrap up here, do you have any final thoughts or key takeaways you'd like to leave with our audience?
I think project management is, I wish more people were aware of this kind of profession, this career. I happen to be, I studied engineering because I was good at math, but I don't actually like doing math. I don't actually like doing, like, I like designing things, but I don't like designing things as a job. That sounds like work, and I already said I don't like work. But project management was a way for me to utilize skills that I'm not trained on, but I'm naturally good at, and that being connecting and talking to people. And if you're somebody who's naturally good at connecting and talking to people, and you also have an intuition or a way with understanding technical things, then project management might be a really enjoyable role for you. I enjoy engineering, but I don't want to get paid for it. And so as a project manager, I get to sit in all these engineering meetings and tell them when to get everything done. And every now and then I might propose an exciting kind of design idea, because I did study this stuff. But at the end of the day, it ain't my job to actually go out and make the drawings and whatnot. And so, yeah, like, just consider the role. It is awesome to be able to directly impact, directly benefit, directly influence products without ever having to actually be an engineer.
So it bridges the gap on a administrative level, but it it still piques your interest. So
Yep.
love
Yep.
that. Love that. Blend of both worlds. So this brings the end of today's session. A huge thank you to you, Evan Moss, for inspiring this discussion, and for all of you tuning in today. Please don't forget to join us for the next session of Journey into Tech series, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye.